Fog number 84 is Danny Moore. Danny made his Origin debut in Game 1 of the 1995 series and is a member of Paul Vautin's Neville Nobodies. He went on to play 4 games for Queensland. Danny was born in Townsville and made his NRL debut for Manly off the bench in round 7 of the 1991 season. Former Queensland coach Graham Lowe, his first coach at the Sea Eagles. Danny was a member of Manly's Premiership winning side of 1996 and played in 3 straight grand finals before heading to England to play with Wigan, where he also won a Premiership. In 2001, Danny finished his NRL career back home with the North Queensland Cowboys.
Well, Danny Moore, thanks for your time. What does it mean to you to be a Fog?
Well, it's quite an interesting situation. I was 15 years of age and I said to my mum, I'm going to play for Queensland. Just made a statement to her one day and I was lucky enough to achieve it. So when I went to Sydney, things were progressing pretty well. I went to Sydney to play and a lot of people say, oh, you know, do this, do that. And in the back of my mind was playing for Queensland. So yeah, it is pretty special. You know, whether you play one game or you play 40 odd games, just to have that opportunity to pull on the Queensland State of Origin jersey is just an amazing part of your life.
Like so many of your fellow Fogs, you have a regional background, being from Townsville. What was it like for Danny Moore growing up in North Queensland?
Pretty carefree, great time, 70s and 80s. My father played a bit of rugby league and a bit of rugby union. So we'd spent a lot of Saturdays at U Street in Townsville and Sundays at the Sports Reserve watching the rugby league. So pretty good part of life. And yeah, my father was a pretty handy footballer, knocked back an opportunity to come to Brisbane when I was just a baby. So I was lucky enough that playing sport and running around like mad was good fun up in North Queensland.
So where did your career start?
I went down and had a game for Centrals in Townsville. So a family friend offered to take myself and his son and another friend's son down to training, and went down and had a run there. So Gordon Tallis's father coached us for a couple of years. I played alongside Gordon's brother for a number of years, and then. It all started. Turned up, had a game. I probably would still be playing soccer, or I may have pursued a soccer career. But after my first season of playing both league and soccer in the same season, the soccer coach said to me, "Hey, you need to make a decision whether you're going to play rugby league or play soccer." And I said, "Oh, well, bugger you, I'll go play rugby league." So that's where it all started.
When did you first get noticed as being a player of potential?
Probably not all the way through. I was handy enough to make the local rep side, the Townsville side, from under 10s through to under 15s, and then I had a massive growth spurt between 14 and 15 years of age, and before you know it, at 16 years of age, I was playing under 17s for my local club side, South in Townsville, and playing half a game of first grade under another Queensland legend, Mr. Marshall Cobble, who you may know from the Townsville area.
So these are pre-North Queensland Cowboy days.
Definitely.
What were your aspirations then?
Probably up until that age, I just loved playing footy. I was never a superstar. I always used to get the most consistent award, was usually the award I got. And then I turned 15, grew a bit, and then all of a sudden I started thinking, oh, okay, I'm pretty handy at this game. I'll have a bit more, go a bit further from there. And like I said, at 15, I made the comment to my mum, and so probably it was in the back of my mind I was going to go and play in the New South Wales Rugby League comp as it was there.
Why there and not Brisbane?
Because at that stage the Broncos were coming into that competition. So so that was 15. It was 86. Broncos were on their way into the competition. That was going to be the future of the game. So I thought that was where I was going to go, either to Brisbane or down to Sydney, and that was probably where that all came from.
How'd you end up at Manly?
My father's still dirty about that. we had a meeting with John Rebo and Wayne Bennett after the State of Origin game here in Brisbane, after I'd played a curtain raiser. And Dad was pretty keen for me to continue my university studies. I was halfway through a real estate valuation degree. But Graham Loeb went out of his way. He was coach of the Queensland side that night, came down to the dressing room and said, I need to talk to number 13. And he was very clear that he wanted me at the club and went a long way to making sure that I was going to go that direction. And probably John Rebo actually was probably the thing that probably broke it for the Bronx. He came up to see myself and my girlfriend, who's my wife. And he was just John being John was just sort of rubbed me up the wrong way, and that's probably the one thing that sort of pushed me to definitely follow the Manly path. How
big a move was it for a boy from North Queensland to head to one of the best parts, it must be said, of Sydney, the Northern Beaches?
It was. I was pretty lucky. A cousin of mine lived on the hill at Queenscliff, so really that's a 5-10 minute drive from Brookvale Oval itself, and 5 minutes back into the middle of Manly. So I was pretty lucky like that. I had a little bit of stability. He's 5 years older than me, so he made sure that I ate properly and cleaned my room and all that sort of thing. But massive culture shock. The first 2 years down there, between growing up in Townsville, spent a lot of time out on my grandparents' property. As a young fella, it was certainly a bit of an eye-opener moving into the big smoke of Sydney.
Was there ever a time you were thinking about going home? Was it too much at times?
I'd certainly, it does. It's a big pressure cooker, especially when you go down there being a Queensland representative and being identified as a player of the future for the club, and things didn't always go to plan. You think, I'll just keep doing this and keep doing that, and you have to make those adjustments for the different game that they played at Manly. So it was. There was times where I did sort of think about heading back. Went back for a holiday at one stage over a weekend. Knew that I had to stay down there if I was going to succeed, and sort of made a decision that not to sneak back home during the course of the year. It's just not a healthy way, because you see what your mates are doing. You go, I'll give it all away and just go and hang around with my mates and to have all the fun things going on. But it's a tough road. It's a tough road for any young player coming from anywhere in Queensland to travel all the way down to Sydney and fit into a footy club.
You got a taste in 1991, basically one game, and then had to wait a hell of a long time for another opportunity. Tell us about that.
Well, it was funny that it probably should have been a few more opportunities, but what people probably don't understand was Graham Lowe had some significant health issues, and he'd had blood clots in his brain and things like that. So he used to get quite forgetful. And so a number of times I was taken off at half time in reserve grade and put on the bench in first grade, and he forgot he had me resting there. So the way it used to run in those days, if you played lower grade, half a game of lower grades, you're eligible to have a run on it, have a run in first grade. And a number of times I sat there, and nothing happened. And I understand he used to get a bit forgetful about all that. So it was one of those things, and I was very, very disappointed. I got dragged off halfway through an under-21 game to sit on the bench for first grade at Seagulls. Wally was playing. I always wanted to make a tackle on Wally. Never got that opportunity. But in the flip side of the coin is my first ever game, that 10 minutes against Parramatta in 91. The first player to tackle was Brett Kenny, and I went, that's not too bad.
That's pretty close to it, yeah.
You tackle another legend like that.
Well, you're a forward in those days.
I was a wide, I went down as a lock forward, probably a bit more of a wide running back rower, was probably my go. But different game, my first game in Sydney, reserve grade against North Sydney. I think I was asleep after 5 minutes, where a front rower by the name of Wayne Takita got me with a nice little forearm jolt. And I spent a night in hospital after being knocked out cold. So it was, a very different game.
How'd you end up moving to the three quarters?
At the start of the 93 season, I'd been having a couple of runs in the back row, and they moved me to the centres for a reserve grade game. Had a strong game. The next week we were playing Sydney City at Brookvale Oval in a trial, and I got an opportunity to start in the centres. And probably one moment that might have given me a better opportunity was Rod Silver made a break for Sydney City, going straight down the middle of the field, ready to score into the post. I come from the right centre and ran him down before the try line. So covered a bit of distance and dragged him down, and they must, okay, well, he's got a bit of pace. We'll see how we go out wide.
Well, timing is everything in life, and particularly in rugby league. You made your presence felt at Brookvale just at the right time. Manly was about to play in 3 consecutive grand finals. Super League was on the horizon, which disrupted the game as well. But timing was critical, and you found yourself in a really good Manly side at the right time, didn't you?
Yeah, well, that was very interesting because '93 we had a heap of those young guys come through. The '92 side, lower grades, under 21 side had your Stephen Menzies, your Daniel Gartners, your Nick Kosefs, Jack Elsgood. So Bozo had assembled a big lump of good young players in the Manly juniors and brought them through. And then, I was only a year or two older than a lot of those lads, and so I sort of fit into that group of players coming through to the club at that point in time. And on the back of that, it took us a couple of years to fine-tune a few things, and obviously we ran into Broncos 93, 94 semi-finals that saw our exit. But it was Bozo was a very clever man. He made sure that he selected the right players to plug into the team to strengthen the team. And I was pretty lucky. We had a lot of local juniors. We're probably amongst the clubs down in Sydney. We probably had the most local juniors in our top squad. And then we were lucky enough that I was one of those imports that he saw as a part of building the side into a better side than it was originally.
And you were starting to be noticed by the Queensland selectors being brought into the squad, I think 94. What was it like to be told, stand by?
Yeah, brilliant. We played, I think it was West on a Saturday in Sydney. I was about to go to my cousin's 21st birthday party, and I got a phone call to say, hey, you're heading into the Queensland side as a standby for Kevy Walters. So I basically went home, packed a bag, jumped on a plane that evening and flew up to Brisbane to join the squad.
What was it like walking in?
Well, it's an interesting one because there was a lot of familiar faces in there. So there was guys that, young guys I'd played against, obviously those guys I'd looked up to, and then there was a couple of local faces I knew. So yeah, it was. I suppose you spend your first 24, 48 hours in that situation, probably a little bit awestruck, but I was pretty confident that I'd been playing well through the season, and the opportunity came to be part of the squad, and just get involved with it, see what goes on, and again we see it now, where we have our extended squads, players come in there, and it's a great opportunity to blood players to get a feeling for what the team does and how they go about what they do.
On reflection, do you think that helped you looking ahead to 1995 when the Neville Nobodies got together and everyone spoke about how inexperienced it was? There was a couple of players that had played Origin. That time in camp, how beneficial was that for you next year?
Well, I think you know what's expected of you. You know how the team runs. We probably won't talk about the first 2 nights out on the drink and the old school things. But yeah, certainly there was a way that the camps ran, and the whole idea was that you'd come together, build a team in the first couple of nights out, and meet our requirements to look after Forex as a great sponsor, and then we'd get down to the important stuff of getting prepped for the game. So it was really good in that regard. And then, I suppose I always see it that it's great to have experience in the team. It's great to have youth in the team, and the best teams generally have a combination of the two. We probably had a little bit top heavy on the inexperience, but we're all pretty handy players. I think that's probably what people forget is. I'd say most of the guys that were in our 95 side were probably in the Kangaroo train-on squad at the end of 94. They were probably playing their club footy. I know I was part of that. You know, you stayed on after your club's commitment finished. You'd keep training for a number of weeks until they actually announced the Kangaroos side after the grand final. So probably a lot of us were thereabouts, and you just need that opportunity.
What were your expectations of that 95 series? When did you start believing, I suppose?
Oh, I think we believed pretty much from the moment. We've heard all the stories and that sort of thing. I think we had a quiet confidence. I don't think we looked around the room and thought to ourselves, oh, they're too good for us. I never looked at... I played most of that series against Paul McGregor, and I actually always had good games against Paul in the New South Wales comp at the time, or became the RL comp. So I was already confident. I was thinking, okay, well, I can handle him in club footy. I don't think it's going to be too much different in the bigger game. So I had that quiet confidence that I could handle my opposite number. But then I looked around. I looked at a good, tough forward pack, and Origin was always won, by a forward pack, meeting it. We look at all those games that Wally turned. All he needed to do was that forward pack to match them, blow by blow, shot by shot, and just give them opportunity. I looked at the back line. We had pace out wide, and then Corny, a lot of experience. Probably been one of those on the edges players and just needed that opportunity. Rowdy would still put his hand up and have a run today if he could. So I think the ingredients were right, and then probably to go on with it, Jason Smith. I always looked at Origin being about, especially from a 5'8", you needed a 5'8" who could play as a forward. I've always thought that the best Origin teams are ones that have 5'8s that can play like a forward. And when Jason came in, he fulfilled that role very, very well.
So 2-0 in Sydney in the first game, Wayne Bartram's goal, the difference. Then to Melbourne with the wild brawl that everyone remembers, and that clinched that series. What are your memories of winning that game in Melbourne, and I suppose the relief or the excitement to realise that your team had done it?
Probably the key was probably our defence. I think that was one thing that people probably forget about. Fatty probably didn't do too much attacking work with us, but he always did a little bit of defensive work with us. And that never ever give up was a little motto that we had. And if you have a look at it, every time we're on our line, it was just bodies just throwing themselves in front of opposition players. And the amount of times they went over the line. Singy was the boss. He had most of them wrapped up around the ball, but you saw there was Bardo there was Robbie O there. Everyone was just throwing themselves in to do everything they could to stop them from scoring a try. So I think it's probably key, those things that as much as we like to have a bit of fun with Fatty and rag on him, that was one thing that he really focused on, was that ability to defend our line.
One of the key things that other 95 members have spoken about sitting in that chair is how important then it was to make it a clean sweep, to come back home and win in front of the fans. What are your memories of that game 3?
Yeah, it was a big impetus. I think we were like, bugger that, we've won the series, but it means nothing. If we can't win at home, it means absolutely nothing, because to come home and get, if we'd been trounced at home, it would have just, no one would have ever thought about who won the series. They would have just looked at us getting trounced there. So, and I think that was the best part about it. We actually went and played the last game. We took opportunities. We actually went and played. So it was sort of, that was probably, it was very, very satisfying to come home and again to have all those Queenslanders cheering as we ran out and as we raised the trophy at the end of the day.
What were the emotions like? You mentioned earlier as a 15-year-old, you told your mum you're going to play for Queensland. What were the emotions like, A, when presented that jersey on that first night in Sydney, and B, running out representing Queensland in Origin for the first time?
If you ask my wife, I'm not a very emotional person. And that's probably fairly correct. The probably the game, the most amazing part about that first game was I looked up at the clock and I thought we'd be going 5 minutes and we'd be going 20 minutes. It was so fast that you're on autopilot. You just boop, 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 boop. And I think that's the difference about Origin. Origin is club football, up it by 200 or 300%. And I think that's what people, you've just got to throw yourself in there and just go for your life. And I think that's probably it. So emotionally, it probably wasn't such a big deal. I think coming out at Melbourne was a bigger deal. It was a big crowd, and it's being MCG, loud. So I think, you probably just start to get the tingles. We've won the first game. And again, there was a lot of talk they were going to come back and bash us and all that sort of thing. So all of a sudden, it's that bit of fight and flight going on there. The hairs on your neck stand up, and it's like, okay, well, looks like we're going to get right into this one. So,
what about running out across the road?
Well, that's the most magical place in the world. That was the place that I played for North Queensland. My first game for North Queensland, and we rolled Brisbane in the state trials. That catapulted my career. So I've always treasured it. Even going out and as tough as it was the South Queensland Crushers days, even playing there against South Queensland Crushers meant the world to me. I still remember when there wasn't much in the line of stands there. You just had hills and more hills and more hills. So it's a magical place. It's just something about it. There's there and probably Central Park when I played for Wigan. There are a couple of those special places that you go and they just have an aura about them.
So 95 was pretty special. And then in 96, you win a Premiership. What was that like?
I think that's the difference. Like the 95 was amazing. The time we had in camp and what we achieved, it was just,
It's amazing in what 3 games the legacy that can lead, opposed to a whole season of winning your premiership and being able to try and compare them.
They're so different. I think that's probably the hard part is that Origin is, you're there and it's just full on. I think from the first camp to the game here, the third game, was probably 6, 7, 8 weeks. I can't remember exactly how many weeks it was, but so it's very compact, and there's and it was just hell for leather. 96 Premiership, we started in November. You start training in November. That is, you got basically 10, 11 months of work rolled in. So it's a different kettle of fish. And Bob Footen always used to say to us, only 17 players win a grand final every year. More players play for Australia in a year than win a grand final. So that was one thing he always used to make a big deal of it. Different emotions. It's just different ways of how things sort of play out.
And you also, speaking of Bob Fulton, more players play for Australia. You were fortunate enough to pull on that green and gold jersey. What did that mean to you?
I saw it as a great honour. It's an interesting one because people will say, you played for Queensland, you played for Australia, what meant more to you? And probably because that was as a 15-year-old, the Queensland jersey did mean more to me. Playing for Australia was an honour and I treated it as an honour. So it was probably, I didn't think I'd ever play for Australia. So, the fact that I managed to play the New Zealand Test Series and we won that, go away to a World Cup. It was a beautiful bonus. Probably in my eyes. Different feelings and emotions over those different situations.
As a Queenslander, and there was a couple you played with from Manly, going back to Manly, particularly say in 95, when there was a few Manly boys in that New South Wales side. What are your memories of heading back to Brookvale for the first time after that clean sweep? Did they talk to you?
Well, no, actually, probably what more importantly was actually after the second game. So after myself and Hopper having a bit of a dance, after the second game, I walk into training on the Friday. Bozo's got the video ready to go, and he goes, "Hey, Picker, how do you think you went against Hopper?" And I said, "Well, I don't have a bruise on me, Bozo, so I don't think it went too bad." So yeah. So, but I think they couldn't quite figure. They still couldn't figure it out. I think every game I'd come back and I'd play my club footy in between each game, and you get a few comments, a few questions here and there, and I don't think they could quite work out how we achieved what we did during that series.
You mentioned Wigan a little bit earlier. You went over and spent some seasons over in Super League playing with Wigan and the London Broncos. What was that experience like, winning a premiership with one of the most famous clubs in the world?
I always wanted to go and play in England. Funnily enough, at the end of the 92 season, I had an offer to go over and play an off-season in England. But Graham Lowe said to me, he said, "You can take it, but if you go, you won't get a start back here." And at that stage, I didn't have a contract at Manly, but he said, "Look, we'll give you a 1-year extension to see what happens." And so I knocked that back. And then obviously we were going through the Super League war and all that sort of thing going on. So 98 was a really funny year. At that stage, the club, Manly, was being very mindful of the future for them. And there became an opportunity. Craig Innes got an offer to go back and play rugby union in New Zealand. Mark Carroll was going to London to play. And then they actually were looking for a centre. And they were talking to John Hopewadi, and my manager and Hopper's manager are the same guy. And they said, "Well, look, Hopper's more of a winger than he is a centre. How about I make a few phone calls?" Anyway, so he rang me, "Would you be interested in going to Wigan?" And I said, "Okay, yeah, interested." And I still had a year to run at Manly. And when I spoke to Frank Stanton, Frank was like, "Yeah, if that's what you want to do." So the club was very supportive of it. They knew that the game was in there's a bit of turmoil, a bit going on there, and they knew at that time they had to make some decisions. So I went with a blessing from the club. And Hopper signed the contract to stay at the club, and I took that opportunity to go to Wigan.
How's life treated you post-football?
Bit of a mixed bag. You play your career, and we were at the second half of my career. The money was starting to grow a bit. The Super League war was the impetus for more money in the game. So look, I didn't do too bad out of the game, but there is a big change of going from being a professional sports person back into the real world, and there is a bit of an adjustment period there. So it does take its time. I went back to my career that I had when I was in Sydney. I actually became a financial advisor. When I went overseas, my clients went to my mum and dad, and I went back into business with my parents in Townsville. That's how I ended up having a run at the Cowboys. But I actually continued that career to 2011, and the industry was getting over-regulated by the government. So I actually walked out the door of work one day, rang my brother, and become a trades assistant electrician. So, and since then I've done my electrical ticket and work in technical training a lot of apprentices for Ergon these days.
You mentioned the Cowboys. For a Townsville boy, what did it mean to finish your career there? Playing 2 games for North Queensland, but what did it mean to finish your career in Townsville?
Yeah, well, they were always my second side. I loved having the opportunity to have a run for the club. Unfortunately, they didn't have any more money, so we did engage in discussions about staying on at the club, but the club didn't have any money to offer contracts. So I just shook hands and finished up that year and went back and played a bit of rugby union with my youngest brothers. So it's just the way it goes as a professional sports person. Sometimes it doesn't always work out how you plan.
Who had the biggest influence on your career?
Probably Bob Fulton, just teaching me the game. I feel now that what I've learnt of the game and took me through my career, and I still do have done coaching over the years. I've done some recruitment over the years. So what Bob taught me about the game sort of stayed with me. John Money, my coach at both Wigan and London, a lot of regards, I think he's a lot like Wayne Bennett and Bob Fulton. They're different, but they're similar in a lot of the things they do. And John gave me a little bit of freedom when I got to Wigan to just be a player and enjoy the game. Whereas Bozo was very much team first, and so all those different things along the way. But certainly Bob Fulton, number one, and my father. My father has sort of been a big influence. He's sort of been there all the way and supported me with those decisions that I've made.
He has accepted that you won a premiership for Manly. He's happy with that?
Yeah, he doesn't have a problem with that. Doesn't have a problem with that at all.
What do you reckon that young kid who went down with his mates to Centrals in Townsville as an 8-year-old would think if someone said to them, Danny, you're going to play for Queensland, you're going to represent your country, you're going to play nearly 200 games at the top level with some of the biggest clubs in the world, and by the way, you're going to be the first player to win a premiership in the northern and southern hemisphere. How does that sit with you?
So, yeah, surprising. I look around at some of the great players that I've played with and against, and haven't achieved some of the things that I've achieved. So I'm immensely thankful for what my career's given me. Still probably at times there you do pinch yourself and a bit of disbelief. But if someone had said that to me as an 8-year-old, I probably would have just laughed at them and walked on off. So.
Well, Fog number 84, Danny Moore, thank you so much for your time today. Congratulations on a wonderful career.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Fog's Queenslander podcast. If there's a Fog you want to hear from, leave a comment to let us know. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos.